Hi there. So, you guys know the, trust the process thing? I want to warn you, these next few chapters, in my opinion, I don't know about anyone else, but for me, I feel like they're a little cringy. So, they're kind of important, though, because if you don't have them in there, it's like, character development, you know what I'm saying? Like, some parts in it are just not as fun as I want it to be, but trust me, there's 7 books to this series. It's gonna be good. You're gonna want to, you might even forget about this chapter, to be honest. So, yeah. Bye. Freya was so nervous. Whoever this person was knew Motaro, and seeing how he looked did not help either. 2 hours went by, and he finally felt better and was willing to talk. "So, does anyone know where I am?" he whispered. Freya walked in and sat down. She sat there and just looked at him. Okay, am I not making sense to you?" he said, getting impatient. Freya stared intensely at him. "First, who are you?" she said, squinting. He growled and shook his head. "I'm Vex," he sighed. "I would like to know where I am," he said, getting a little angry. Freya flinched back and blinked in shock. Okay, Mr. Grumpy, you take your name seriously. I'm Freya, and you're in the Minotaur Mansion," she said softly. Vex stood up and walked to her and looked deeply into her eyes. "Freya?" he whispered. Yes, she said awkwardly. "Oh, Freya!" he said again, getting a little excited. Yeah, what?" she said, getting confused. Vex's tail started wagging. "Oh my gosh, you're Motaro's friend, and the docs brought me to the Minotaur Mansion?" he said, walking around the room. Freya knew now that he was definitely, friends with Motaro or something. "Wait, do you know where she is?" she said, hoping for a good answer. Almost immediately, Vex's excitement vanished. "Taro," he whispered. Rashi walked in and noticed his fox legs again. "What is going on in here?" he said, trying to match the emotions of the room. "Not very well." "Well, Taro and I got the Yeti wool," Vex said, sitting down. "And I saved her. And then I decided to go with her," he sighed. "And then she saved me." He started to tear up a little bit. Freya froze. "No, she doesn't do that to strangers." So what did you do to her?" Garashi stopped Freya and calmed her down. "There is always a good explanation," he said. And he turned to Vex. "So, what do you say happened?" he said, very seriously. Vex looked down. "She fell in love," he said softly, holding her dagger in her hand. He couldn't hold it as much as he thought. "And I guess I did too," he whispered. Freya did not know what to do. She couldn't believe that in a matter of a week, Motaro could already find love. Garashi wasn't buying it either. He chuckled a little and sat down on another stool. "And I'm a dragon," he smirked. Vex could not believe they didn't believe him. "Oh, yeah?" he said, standing up. Garashi scoffed and smiled at him, and Freya went in between them before they started fighting. "You guys are acting like little kids. This isn't funny," she said, pushing Garashi back. "Vex, where is Motaro?" she said, with a stern look on her face. Vex's tail went down. I told you, she fell off a cliff." Freya lost her confidence. "I knew something bad happened," she said softly, trying not to believe him too quickly, just in case. Vex opened his window and jumped out. I'm not sitting around and crying anymore. I'm finding Motaro, he shouted. Garashi went to stop him, but he was too far already. There was a knock at the door, and a Minotaur walked in. Is Vex here? She said. Garashi sighed. Nope, you just missed him. Freya was looking out the window, and the Minotaur groaned. I'll go find him, she mumbled. Why do you care so much? Garashi asked, getting curious. Well, we kind of saved each other, so I wanted to thank him, and I'm wanting to find Motaro as well, she said, walking out of the room. I do have some blame for what happened to her, she mused, closing the door as she left. Garashi and Freya exchanged looks. I still don't know who she is, Freya said, scratching the back of her head. They went to Moonfox and told him what they were going to do. Ah, yes, Islia already told me. She said you might go too, Moonfox said with a smile. He huffed. She was the ox that brought him here. Evil warriors cursed her and took her to the tundra. We've been looking for her. Moonfox flicked his nose ring, and a small goat minotaur came rushing over. It's time for your training, young one, he said, patting the minotaur's head. Freya and Garashi left and quickly caught up with Islia. So where are we going? Freya asked, being as serious as possible. Islia sighed. Well, we're going to the cliff. That she, you know, Islia said, not taking her eyes off the trail. Slowly it began to rain, and they just continued on as if it wasn't raining. So how far is it? Garashi asked, looking at her spear that Islia was holding. She huffed and didn't answer. She looked very mad for some reason. After a while, the rain grew worse and the thunder went off every once in a while. They found the cliff and walked along the bottom. There, up ahead, you can see it, Freya said, rushing over. Freya saw Vex kneeling down on a boulder, and Garashi noticed it too. Islia grabbed out her spear and started digging at the rocks. Vex looked over in grief. It's hopeless, he said softly. Freya and Garashi ran over and helped as well. How do you know? At least we'll have a body to burn, Freya said. Vex coughed. She's not there, he said, hitting his fist against the rocks. He stood up, and Freya just grunted and fell back. At least it's worth a shot, she panted. Garashi nodded in agreement. She's gone. She's already buried here. Just go away already, Vex shouted. Bursting lightning hit nearby, and Islia stopped. Her ears sucked down. The storm is getting bad. We need to find shelter, she yelled over the rain. Vex fought his thoughts for a moment, but agreed. They all found a side cave poking out of the cliff's bottom. I don't know for sure, but that wolf is staring at us, Garashi said, pointing into the storm, where under a tree was a navy blue wolf. It seemed to not be wet at all by the rain. The wolf sneezed and walked away, where the storm shrunk down into a small cloud that followed the wolf. Wait, what was that? Vex asked, stepping back. Oh, we need to get out of here. Now! He panicked. Islia realized what he meant, and also started running. Hurry! She huffed, but it was too late. They already got caught. You are trespassing! A warrior yelled. They were tied up and their weapons taken. Don't we get to reason first? Garashi asked, worrying about what they would do to them. You know, Snake and Wolf don't really fight like this, he added. Who asked you? One warrior spat. You don't understand. We don't like your kind, another hissed. Islia huffed annoyedly and rolled her eyes. He's talking about working with minotaurs, she mumbled. Freya scoffed. That won't matter. There still needs to be some reason for capturing us. She stared down the captain with a smile. Oh, no, oh, do the thing already, he panicked, nudging the other guard. He threw a gas that made them go to sleep. It won't get away with this. Rashi coughed before falling asleep. Chapter 8. Grashi woke up and tried standing up, but he was tied down with blood chains. He looked around. Freya was able to walk, but her arms were strapped around her body and hooked up to the wall. He whispered, but a shock collar zapped him. Islia was handcuffed and muzzled, and Vex was blindfolded and surrounded by blood chains. So he wasn't really tied up, but he couldn't get out still. When he saw the look on Freya's face, he knew there was more than a tie-up for Grashi. Freya shook her head and trying not to cry. Grashi? She whispered. He looked at a puddle, and the reflection showed 5 arrows stabbing into his back. He was connected to the wall by 10 different chains. Grashi panicked. He stared down and hyperventilating a little. Islia woke up and gasped at the sight of Grashi. This is all my fault, Grashi whispered. A guard passed by and laughed in their faces. Pity, he scoffed and walked away. Grashi felt a strong stab of pain, and he looked to see that another arrow had shot through his chest. Vex had white aura covering the chains, and a moment later, it was all frozen over. He yelled out with fury and burst the bars down. The aura then gathered and gave him 2 tails and fox fur on his hands. No more cages! He screamed, bursting down Islia's cage. No more hurting people! He yelled, bursting through Freya's bars. Islia carefully took the chains off of her, and a whole squadron of soldiers came and attacked, but half of them were frozen in fear by what they saw. The other half kept charging. Vex let out an angry shout that turned into a howl, and he charged at them. I show no mercy! He yelled, raising his hand. A few seconds later, his spear appeared in his hand, and he sliced at the men. It froze some of them. I already lost 2 important people, and I won't lose more, he said, twirling his spear. Islia found her spear and cut into Garashi's cage. We'll get you out, she whispered. Freya stopped her. We can't. It'll kill him, she whispered back. A roar came from Vex's area, and out came an army of warrior trolls. The trolls climbed onto the walls and ceiling, some on the ground. Come on, I've got time, Vex screamed, with his gray and white aura flaring brighter. Suddenly, bluish-gray fox ears came from Vex's head and claws in his hands. The trolls leapt at him and covered him all up. Freya carefully unhooked the chains. You'll be okay, Grashi, I promise, she whispered, while Islia yanked out the arrows one by one. It'll hurt less if you stop moving, she huffed. Grashi passed out and woke up in a black and white realm. Kuroshima? He whispered. Are you there? There was a low growl and a wave of relief from the pain. Grashi lifted up and Kuroshima absorbed it. You're welcome, mortal, he grumbled. Now it is not the time for me to help yet, he said, laying down. Grashi woke up and realized that they had freed him. Thank you, Islia, he said, noticing all the wounds were only scratches now. Freya then released Vecfaunus, too, to help Vex. She burst through all the goblins and trolls, with her aura burning them all. Ha-ha-ha! Vex said, raising his spear. Suddenly, all the trolls and goblins stopped. He slowly backed away, and something growled behind him. They ran past Vex and the others and kept running. What was that? Freya said, stepping back, with Vecfaunus returning into her. From the shadows, There was someone clapping. "Bravo! Good show!" the man said, revealing a chimera, with the wolf village chief riding it. This chimera had dragon wings and a scorpion tail, unlike others, and the dragon head snorted, and the chimera cornered them. "What?" Hiroshi whispered, trying to stand up. Islia punched the nose of the goat's head. "Come get us!" she spat. The lion looked up at the chief and growled, and with the chief chuckling and nodding, the goat stuck his head up, ready to strike. Islia sighed. "Freya, tell Moonfox this was for the mansion," she said, raising her spear. The chimera growled, and the dragon head quickly struck down at Islia, but the spear was quickly able to pierce into him. The lion grabbed one half of her and played tug-of-war with the goat for her, but the spear was still stuck in the dragon, so she couldn't reach it. "Islia!" Freya screamed, falling to her knees. They all chewed on her body, and the blood went everywhere. The dragon head coughed up her spear, and Vex stepped back, retracting to normal. Freya grabbed Islia's spear and hooked it to her back. "Kuroshima, now would be a great time," Kurashi said in his head. "No, it's hopeless," he replied. Kurashi put out his hands, waiting for handcuffs. "Come on, there's no use," he whispered to Freya. Vex looked down and retreated as well, grabbing Freya and putting her on her feet. The chief chuckled and signaled some guards to chain them up. Freya had her eyes glued shut with tears, but she didn't cry loudly or make much noise at all. Vex couldn't get the blood and guts out of his head. "Archani, do you actually talk, or is it just a weird thing Mataro had?" Vex thought. "Is Archani dead?" he wondered. They were put into cages, guarded by the chimera. They were put into a wheat field inside a crater on top of Grey Wolf Mountain. They had Vex blindfolded and his legs tied. Kurashi was completely surrounded by blood metal bars and chains, and Freya was wrapped up in a straitjacket, blood-fused. Kurashi was taking a nap, almost, talking with Kuroshima. "So you can't get me out now? But if you fell asleep," Kurashi planned, "maybe I could get out?" he wondered. Kuroshima didn't agree. "We are one. You can't get out," he mumbled. Meanwhile, Vex was still trying to contact Archani. "Hello, am I talking to no one?" he said in his head. He opened his eyes and saw that he was in a black and white room. Over by Kurashi was Kuroshima talking with Kurashi, and Archani was walking over to them. "If my human can cut off his mask, he might be able to get free," she said, still looking down at Kuroshima. Kurashi looked over to Vex, shocked at first, but sighed and smiled at him without saying anything. "We need Vecfonus to know the plan," Archani said, looking over to the blackened Freya. Vex pieced together Archani's plan. "We all need to move around and make noise. It'll distract the Chimera's heads," Vex said, walking around and thinking about the plan. Archani and Kuroshima exchanged looks and agreed. Then both Kurashi and Vex woke up back in the normal realm. Freya was staring blankly at Islia's spear, with tear marks still dried on her face. Vex made a muffled scream and started jumping around and squirming about his cage. Kurashi also let out a yell and started kicking the metal. "What are your friends doing?" Vecfonus whispered in Freya's head. The chimera stood up and looked down at the cages. "Stop!" the chief ordered. He looked over at Freya. "Tell them to stop, whatever this is," he barked. "I'm sorry, I don't speak rat," Freya mumbled, started banging against her cage as well. When the chimera and the chief were distracted, Vex hooked his mask on a sharp chain link and broke it off. He used his teeth to loosen the chains and got hooked on his hands and pulled. He got free and pretended not to be, but he did settle down and fake passed out. The wolf chief scoffed and mounted the chimera. Garashi understood and pretended to hit his head on the bars and pass out as well. Freya didn't necessarily understand what the plan was, but she knew to slowly stop. She then fell down and pretended to go unconscious like the others. No suspicious activity, especially for demons, the chief said, completely fooled. An hour later, Vex got up and used some ice to break his lock. We need to get out of here. Bad, he said. Freya flipped over to her back. You think? She said. He unlocked her cage and tried to rip off her straitjacket, but just then, the chimera burst down and threw Vex to Garashi's cage. Its scorpion tail shot up and prepared to strike Freya. No, Freya, look out! Garashi shouted, trying to break out of the cage. Stop trying to escape! I have one of the most powerful creatures ever, the chief yelled. Freya noticed something behind him on the cliff and recognized Machax's hammer. Freya smiled. Well, yes, you do. We? She shook her head. We have an army of minotaurs, she said. The minotaurs took that as a signal and charged. Forestia! Machax shouted, bashing his hammer at the chimera. There were all sorts of minotaurs everywhere, most attacking the chimera. One rushed over and was trying to free Freya, and another group of them went to help Garashi and Vex. Moonfox climbed up and kicked the wolf village chief down. You kill, I slayer, he chuckled. He cornered the chief and pulled out his axe. Do you know why I have a double-sided axe? Moonfox said. Because the small one is for cutting off the arms, he shouted, cutting off one of his arms. And now the bigger blade, he chuckled, is for the head, he yelled, cutting off the village chief's head. And what do you know? Tons of murder in this chapter. See, this is why I have my videos not for kids. There's gonna be a lot of stuff going on. Hopefully you liked it. Hopefully you enjoy it. And tell me, I would like to know if you guys like those anatomy videos that I've been doing. I've only done 2 so far. Don't necessarily know if you like them. I might end up doing a plant one next, because haven't yet, and I've mentioned in the book many plants, in Vertaz that obviously nobody knows about. So please, say something. I want to make sure you guys are actually enjoying this, because I don't know. I'm still going to do it anyway, but I want to make sure people are enjoying it. You don't have to. I just want to know. Thanks. Bye.